If your house looks like it's stuck in 2024, I have some predictions for you because we are moving into 2026. And one of my favorite parts is the end of the year because this is where all the predictions for design trends are coming to fruition. I have seen a multitude of design trends over this past year, and I'm starting to see some form moving to the next. So today we are going to go through the best and the worst interior design trend predictions of 2026 that I think are worth it and ones that you should avoid. First on the list is going to be asymmetrical or round rugs. Now I know this sounds very off-putting because not many people have used these correctly, but this is honestly one of my favorite ways to introduce shape and form into a space. Rooms themselves always have a monotony of rectangles and squares, and it is constantly repeated throughout the space. And being able to break it up or create some kind of radial design in a space is really important to making an impact. And these asymmetrical rugs are the perfect representation of how you can create form in a space without it being the first thing that you're drawing attention to, but also softening up the edges. These images are the perfect representations of how you can actually make a space look thoughtfully designed by curating the shapes and the textures that you're bringing in. Now, throwing an asymmetrical rug just randomly in place is going to look out of place in any instance. But I want you to think about not only the color, but also the textures that's repeated throughout the space. For example, depending on what color you have for your wall, having something similar or an undertone of that in the rug in that shape helps break up that monotony, like I said before. Now, these rugs are not great for everywhere, but I find the perfect place to put them are in your living room and your bedroom because it helps have that rounded, almost puddle-like shape that softens the overall room. Curtain doors are, I don't even know where to start with curtain doors. This is an introduction that someone decided was a great idea, and it really wasn't.
Brother,
Doors are designed specifically for not only privacy reasons, but for sound transfer. Having a curtain in replacement of a door is wild. I certainly hope people aren't using these for actual bathrooms, but I know people are introducing them for cabinetry as well as closet. And if we're being honest, it screams dorm room and not in a good way. The only time I would ever see these curtain doors being useful or actually looking good in space is a commercial application. If you have this grand entrance and these curtains that drape down on each side to make an impact, that's where it's actually going to look great. In a residential setting, not so much because you don't have that grand setting of when you're entering. And also, remember, curtains and upholstery absorb smells. So if you have them anywhere close to your cooking or even in an entrance, this is going to absorb a lot of smells that you really don't want to. Now, I've always been a huge advocate for sculptural art pieces, and this makes me so happy to see that convex and concave mirrors are starting to make an impact. Now, I'm not talking about those convex mirrors that you see in parking lots where you need to see around the corners. Having them in smaller applications in a space make not only a visual impact, but also a really beautiful planned perspective of that space being warped in a different reality that turns it into a piece of art. These are great alternatives if you don't like that standard mirror, because not only do you get the sculptural aspect of it, but you get that reflection of the light in your space. Now, I know depending on the application, some of these can look like you're looking in a fun mirror, but at the same time, that's kind of a really beautiful aspect to have in your space, to have certain dimensions that feel warped, almost like you're looking into a different dimension. If you do want to have one of these in your space though, use it sparingly. This is one of those details that is meant to be curated as an art piece and not an actual mirror. So if you're having more than one in your space, you're definitely going to look like you live in a fun house. I'm kind of neutral about this one because I have always been a huge fan of Art Deco. I think it is such an incredibly beautiful and timeless interior design style that can work in certain applications. Now, I am a lover of New York. Everything Art Deco there I think is so incredibly detailed and beautiful. The one challenge with Art Deco is that you need to commit to that style. It's not something that you can just bring in with a few details because it ends up looking out of place. Art Deco is a very specific geometric forward design style that requires a lot of details to emphasize on those geometrics. And if you're not bringing in that visual connection and that design language that curates through your entire space, it's going to look out of place. The reason why I'm neutral on this is because if you go too literal with that Art Deco theme, it literally looks like you're living in the 1920s, which once again can be a vibe, but not something you're going to want to live in regularly. I'm always so interested in seeing who actually creates these design trends and if they actually pick up. There's like one designer out there that makes something happen and another person's like, you know what, that's going to be a design trend. Because this yellow and green that people have been introducing is, let's just say, questionable. These colors, both saturated or desaturated, in my opinion, are very visually impactful to your space and don't actually create a cohesive look. It creates something that has so much energy to it, and honestly, it just looks like your favorite sports team that you've brought into your home. If you've been following me for a while, you know I always say stay away from saturated colors. If you do like those tones, have them in a desaturated level can help a little bit, but I find it still looks really muddy. If you insist on this color, go for an olive and a mustard. This is going to have a much better sense of coordination than that high contrast and high saturated finish. I feel like I predict some of these design trends because I've been following these already for the past year, and it makes me really excited to see that it's actually carrying through not only my projects, but for the rest of the design world. And oversized headboards, I have always been for. Now, I'm not talking about those oversized headboards that you see in those Victorian homes where it goes up 3 stories and it has drapery everywhere, because that is just on a whole different level of dated. When I talk about the oversized headboards, I'm talking about elongating your space. There's a few projects that I'm working on right now where we've introduced a custom headboard that is the full length of the room itself, especially if you have really large bedrooms, which is honestly a privilege in my opinion. As you know, you've been following along my condo renovation. We have a very small bedroom. But if you do have the opportunity to have a really grand space, having a headboard that doesn't feel proportionate to your room is going to look extremely off. So having something that extends to both ends of the walls with certain details and aspects to it are going to create more dimension in the space where it feels scaled and proportioned. This is one of the biggest interior design rules that I follow in a space, is to make sure that the space feels balanced. And in order for a space to feel balanced, you need to have the right scale and proportion. If that headboard is too high, too short, too narrow, or too long, it's going to look off in your space. Now, room dividers are nothing new, but they are an up and rising trend for 2026. This is one of those items that's trendy right now that's going to be dated tomorrow, because I've been seeing so many people introduce these beautiful Asian tapestry pieces. Now, don't get me wrong, these antiques are extremely beautiful, but if you're throwing them into a space that doesn't feel curated towards that specific design style, it just looks out of place. If you have a beautifully artistic tapestry room divider and you have a really modern home, come on people, this doesn't work together. Another issue that I find with room dividers is that they can look visually overwhelming, especially if you have an open concept space with tall ceilings. I know there's been a constant debate between open concept and closed concept in new builds, and specifically wanting rooms split up so it feels more cozy and homey. Having a room divider, especially in a very large room, once again, looks super out of place because it feels like you've just sectioned off an area, and it honestly looks like you're just trying to hide clutter. A quick reminder for anyone that lives in an open concept space, not every detail needs to be a focal point. This is how you curate a design to make sure it looks really nice. You want to be able to have certain focal points that your eye actually travels through the space and lands on something instead of constantly being diverted to certain areas. Sculptural furniture has been trying to make a comeback for the last few years. I know this past year we introduced a lot of curved furniture, and while that can be beautiful, it also needs to be curated in the proper space for it to look good. And while I'm talking about sculptural furniture, I'm saying like real sculptural pieces, not just that subtle curved sofa, but something that has an artistic aspect to it. Now, once again, this is kind of like a neutral design trend that I'm focusing on, because I think in certain applications, it can be beautiful. If you have a sculptural ottoman, a sculptural chair that is specifically designed to be an artistic piece, I think it's absolutely fantastic. But if you're bringing in sculptural furniture for everywhere, it's going to look like a fun house, like you live in a clown, almost distorted looking room. One of the only few people that I've talked about before is Kelly Wearstler that can do this design so well, because it's that visual connection between shape and form and texture that allows you to translate and travel through a space. If you are not comfortable bringing in these kind of like extorted sculptural pieces, stay away from this trend. I know one of my most viral videos that I did online was talking about the design trend with going into darker stains and walnut kitchens. Now, this has sparked a lot more controversy than I originally anticipated, but this is the shift that I'm seeing not only in my own home, but also what clients are looking for. We have started shifting away from this bright white oak finish and started going into that walnut, more creamy or more darker colors. And I think it is absolutely beautiful. I have always been an advocate for dark, moody, rich interiors, as you all know, as you've been following me for years at this point. I think it's really unique that we've created this shift from gray to white oak, now into walnut. Once again, all of these cycles are going to repeat themselves. So just be wary of how you're introducing certain trends and how it can be still timeless in your space. Every timeless aspect has always started out as a trend, so keep that in mind. And if you like it in your space, that's the most important part. Not everyone's gonna want a dark walnut or a black kitchen, but the people that do, you're on my side, and this is why you're here watching me. Animal prints. Now, this is always really interesting because animal prints, I think, in my opinion, can look so chic in commercial settings depending on their application. But as soon as you bring them into the residential setting in your home, they look really kitschy and really tacky. And most of the time, people that are bringing in animal print, it's not just one accent. They're doing the sofa, they're doing the accent chair, they're doing the accent pillow, they're doing too many specific details that introduce a pattern that doesn't feel cohesive with the rest of your space. Animal print details are one of those things that dates extremely quickly. Much like any pattern that is really busy in your space, this is one of those things that you're gonna get bored of very quickly. Unless you're auditioning for one of the Real Housewives series, this is something I would typically avoid. If you do like animal print, because once again, I'm always here to give you assistance on this, I want you to think about the undertones and the specific colors in that animal print itself and make sure that it's repeated throughout the space. So if you're doing, for example, a zebra and you like that black and white, you make sure that black and white is consistent through that room so it feels like it's actually part of the design instead of a focal point that stands out and looks trendy. Never did I think I would ever be excited about doors, but the introduction of hingeless and concealed doors have been huge for the end of this last year, and you're going to see them so much moving into 2026. The purpose of these concealed or hinged doors is to actually hide the door itself. Yes, you're still gonna see that small perimeter frame around the door, but it's not something that you're noticing first thing when you walk into a room. I've done a few applications of these, especially in foyers, on closets or walls that you don't want your eye directly to be focused on. If you've been following our renovation, you know that we're using the concealed hinges on the foyer doors. So when you first walk in, all you're introducing yourself to is the details of the long entrance. Your eye isn't being focused and landing on those doors themselves because you want them hidden. These applications are really great in kitchen settings if you have a pantry or a butler's kitchen behind, which I know is a privilege in itself. I've been designing so many kitchens for clients that have massive kitchens and they have a butler pantry and a prep kitchen where everything happens behind the scenes. This is a really great opportunity to have one of those concealed doors that looks like a panel and it's completely hidden from the space. We've been moving with this design language of having impactful pieces to subtle pieces that hide and blend in. You know you are in a rich person's home if you go in and one, you cannot find the garbage because it's hidden in the cabinets, and if you can't find the doors to the bathroom, because usually they're concealed doors. Checkerboard flooring, in my opinion, has always had a timeless aspect to it, and it has been on the rise since last year, definitely moving into this year. There are certain applications that I am for and certain applications that I am against. When it comes to a checkerboard flooring, I want it to feel consistent and cohesive with the rest of the design of your space that you're using it in. I've seen so many people that are doing a high contrast black and white checkerboard tile that is so impactful that it just screams for attention in your space and doesn't feel like it's actually proportionate and cohesive with the rest of your room. When you're introducing a checkerboard flooring or a flooring in any kind of textile that has multiple finishes, patterns, or colors to it, I want you to think about desaturating those finishes. That high contrast between a black and white is extremely jarring. If you do like the checkerboard look, and depending on the finishes in your house, I want you to bring that application in with more muted finishes. Maybe it's a light gray and an off-white. This is still going to give you that timeless appeal without your eyes fighting for its attention. This is also an application that should be subtle. I do not want to see your entire room or entire floor being as a checkerboard. Having it in smaller applications like a bathroom or even your foyer is going to give you that impact without you getting sick of it all the time. This previous year, we've had the earth tones. We are now moving into desert tones. We're still keeping it neutral, but we're starting to introduce a little bit more of those darker terracotta colors, those chocolates, and those really rich taupes instead of just like beiges. We've had the sad beige home, but I'm really enjoying this trend of moving towards more saturated colors, but are still desaturated. Now I know that sounds like a twist to have a desaturated, saturated colors, but these pictures are the perfect representation of this trend that we're moving towards. These colors pair perfectly with organic forms and textures as well, and keeping it on those earthy tones, bringing in those desert tones work so well together. What's really great about these desert inspired colors is that it gives us the coziness that we crave in our home. We want to feel safe, and having these muted colors work perfectly. Okay, so let's do a little recap because I know I covered a lot of certain things. We've got asymmetrical rugs that I think are really incredible, and they have the capability of being timeless when used correctly. Oversized headboards, 100% for. Terracotta and the walnut darker finishes for your kitchens or even millwork applications, 100% for as well. What I'm not loving are the curtain doors, animal prints, and those try-hard dividers. This is a little reminder that trends are here to inspire you, not trap you into certain design choices and design regret. The last thing I want you doing is spending a lot of money on a trendy item and then hating it in a few months. When it comes to trends, have small applications, whether it's a decor or a vase, to see if you even like it in your space before committing to larger scale items. The best interiors will be timeless because they reflect you personally. Now I have to know, let me know in the comments what trends you're for and what you're against, because honestly, some of these are extremely controversial and other ones I've been rolling my eyes about. Now, if you've been following me for a while, you need to watch my previous video about the design trends of 2025 of last year, because I'm gonna toot my own horn and say that I was so spot on for every single one of these, the ones that were good and the ones that were bad, and guess what? Now you're up to date moving into 2026. That's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. Once again, you can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Mr. Phoenix Gray for all my daily tips and tricks. And if you're ever second guessing yourself, just ask, what would Design Daddy do? Listen to me when it comes to design trend predictions because I know my stuff.